Okay, here we are then. So today we are joined by Matt Stait. Fantastic martial artist. He's kind of come onto my radar in the past kind of year or so, especially through doing stuff on TikTok. He's been doing lots of interviews as well. So it's time to swap the roles over now and let's get you interviewed instead. How are we doing today, Matt? You all right?
Yeah, I'm great, thank you. How about you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Let's start off then with the most simplest of questions and just how you got started in kind of your background in martial arts. And you've had quite an eclectic background, I'd say, reading up about you a little bit. It's quite interesting. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, long story short, I won't go into too much detail because it's not worth it. But I had what can be described as quite a difficult childhood. So single parent family. My father committed suicide when I was in my late teens. There was a lot of violence in the home and stuff. There was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of moving. So essentially, it was one of those situations where I grew up in a environment where it was challenging. And so martial arts was, if you like, my way out of that. And I aspired to do that for a long time and sort of looked on with envy at shows like Monkey on the television and Kung Fu and all that kind of stuff. And eventually managed to sort of find some false starts, if you will. So I tried a couple of things and they didn't quite work out for whatever reason. But then I managed to find a karate school and moved into that. And as I say, when my father committed suicide, it was a real junction in my life, a real crossroads as to how that was gonna pan out. A lot of my peers at that time are dead or in prison. So it was a case of I either had to make some real changes in how I was dealing with the world or go down a pathway that was going to end in tears, basically. So martial arts gave me the doorway into a bright new world. So that's what started it.
Excellent, good. And was it an instant attraction to martial arts then? Was there a specific thing that you liked about it? Was it with the karate? Was it the kata? Was it the sparring? Was it the forms, the discipline, the fitness, a little bit of everything? Did you just want it all?
Well, again, it's one of those, I've always been drawn to martial arts ever since I was a little kid and first started becoming aware of it on things like Saturday afternoon wrestling, for those that are old enough to remember that. And obviously the television shows of the day and that sort of thing. And there was, I talk about it where I say where there were a couple of things that really sort of mesmerized me as a small child, one of them being Spider-Man, another one being Tarzan, and those kind of things. And obviously the truth was, I'm not going to get adopted by a group of traveling gorillas. So martial arts seemed like at least it was a possibility. It could actually happen. And so it was any kind of martial arts at the time. I really, like a lot of other people, I didn't know that there were all the differences and nuances and all that kind of thing. And then when I started trying a few different things, then most of us did the same in that age range. You went where was local, and you went to what was available, because this is a world before the internet. This is a world before all that was possible. So you went to just whatever was available. And I had recently moved to Bristol at that point. And so I tried a few things and sort of fallen in and out and did a bit for a while. But that was when I started taking it seriously. I moved to Bristol and there was a karate club that was around the corner from me that I didn't know at the time just what I'd sort of stumbled upon. And they were exceptionally good, recognized as such. And I was very, very fortunate to find them as my first, if you like, proper home.
Fantastic, good. And how long did you carry that on for then, the karate?
Well, that was on and off for years. Yeah, I did that on and off for a long time. That's, if you like, my foundation. And so that's if you like, the we all need a solid foundation to build upon. And so whatever you style, whatever it is that you do, the mechanics and the fundamentals pretty much remain the same. And so that was, if you like, that was the solid foundation that everything else has gone off. So I was in and out of that for a long time and still have a very deep love for the art.
Brilliant, fantastic, cool. So obviously we've talked about your traditional side of it and the karate, and that's your foundation, that's your roots. But then you've also kind of looked more at the self-defense side of it now. I see that you've also done more of the combat sports as well. So like you've got a black belt in kickboxing, is that right? 4th degree black belt.
That's right, yeah.
So when did you start branching out then and trying other, expanding your horizons a little bit?
Well, basically I was doing the karate, and I was lucky enough to be working with some people that were very keen on making it as real as possible at the sides of things, looking at other elements. And so I was lucky enough to be drawn into a small group of people that included some judo guys, some jiu-jitsu guys, some kickboxing guys, and it was a really good mishmash in the very, very early days of MMA, before MMA was given the name, you know, back in the Valley Judo kind of days.
Yeah.
And so there was that side to it all, but then there was also the element of I started working on the doors. I started going into security as well, and that really made me stop and think about A, what I was learning, and B, what was actually relevant to the current threat, if you will. And so that made me sort of change tack a little bit.
Sure. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about then the security work that you did. Why did you get into it originally? How long did you do it for? Do you have any stories, funny, heartbreaking, things like that? I'm sure every door person or security person that I've talked to, they've always got stories.
Absolutely, yes. I've written a number of books. One of them is basically about my time on the doors, and that's full of stories and so on and so forth, and recollections and things. So yeah, it's a very difficult profession to work in for any length of time and not have some interesting stories at the back end. Yeah. Just because it's life in the raw. It's, you know, it's stripped back, it's bare. So when you feel somebody's full of alcohol and drugs, you get to see the real them. And I was told a long time ago that if you want to see what a person is at a deeper level, give them money or alcohol. Mm-hmm. Because what we tend to do is we tend to hide those parts of ourselves that I don't want other people to see, but it comes out under money and alcohol. So so you see everything in the raw. And so what basically happened with that is I was asked if I wanted to try and do some, because I've been, you know, doing some competitions. I was doing all right at the gym. I'm not a small guy, and it was sort of an obvious progression route, if you like. And so it was, well, do you want to make a few quid? And this was back in the day where you just got given cash kind of thing at the end of the night, and that was that. So started doing that. Found that I was actually pretty good at it, and I don't just mean from a physical point of view, because that's actually a small part of the equation, and that's something that a lot of people sometimes misunderstand about it. And so essentially, because I'd had the upbringing that I'd had, and because I'd been in and around so much confrontation, violence, whatever you want to call it, it wasn't much of a leap. And so moving into that environment, the skills that I'd sort of gathered unknowingly during that period actually came to the fore and came into place. So communication was a really big aspect. Being able to deal with confrontation and deal with the psychology of it all, and actually learn to leverage that and use that as you would a physical skill. And that became something that became really interesting to me. And so then it just became a natural progression. I did it for a bit, did it for some more, finally ended up immersed in it, started becoming, you know, head doorman, running clubs, dealing with things, and so on and so forth. So
perfect, yeah, fantastic. And then obviously you're not on the doors anymore, so you stopped the security work. Was there a reason for this? Was it just time to move on to something else? Was there anything that triggered it, or just a natural end? Old
age and lack of patience.
Okay,
so that's the short answer. I mean, long story short, I did it for a very long time. I did it over many years. I'd actually seen families, generations of families come through. So, you know, you had, can I swear here?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so basically you had the dickheads at one stage. They then ended up having kids, grew up, and those kids became the dickheads.
Yeah.
I've gone through this now a couple of times, and it was like, you know what, I'm tired of rolling around at 4 o'clock in the morning with the latest generation of dickheads. You know, it just got to the point where, and also, you know, old age, creaky bones, injuries. You know, over the years, my hands are smashed to pieces, they're all pinned up, and a lot of competition sort of aches and pains and tears and things. And so long story short, there's all that which is accumulated, but there was one specific moment that really, really brought it home to me how lucky I've been.
Yeah.
And long story short, some guy came for me with a broken bottle. We'd thrown him out the club. Basically, he threatened to stab somebody. He was stealing stuff, he was. And he was caught. He threatened to stab the guy that reported him. He then took a swing at me. I threw him out the door. He went off for a couple of minutes. He came back, wheeled in a broken bottle, actually took a swing at my head and was, you know, literally trying to take my head off. I managed to just sort of block it, and I don't claim any expertise. You know, I wish I could say, oh, I did this 40-point kata move and all this. I did. I screamed like a girl and flung my hands up. You know, but the point was, I managed to deflect the blow, so it didn't do any real harm. Police were called. They chased him around for a bit. It took a bunch of them to actually subdue him. He went off, and I found out the next day that he was being released without charge because it was his first offence, and he was very sorry.
Right.
Which, as you can imagine, didn't sit well with me, because if I hadn't have stuck my arm up and managed to deflect it, he would have taken my head off. There's no two ways about it. The intention was there. So that really then made me think, you know what, I'm not going to renew when the license comes up again. I'm not going to renew. I'm not going to put myself in that kind of danger again. I've been very, very lucky over the years where the injuries that I've had, you know, although I've got a few scars and bumps and lumps and stuff like that, there's been nothing major. And so it was a real wake-up call to me to actually say, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Time to step back. So I still teach security guys. I'm still in and around that world. I train a lot of the guys coming through. A lot of my students are security kind of based because they want that realism to their training.
Sure.
And so I'm still in. I've still got one foot in there, but I don't actively work anymore.
Cool. How easy then did you find it? Obviously, we'll talk. We said about the physical side is just a small part of working on the door, and it's more the communication, the psychology, things like that. But how easily did you find the transition from doing what you were doing in the martial arts? Was it an easy transition to reality, or was there a lot of was it a bit of a shit, what am I doing here? Like, it needs to be adapted, I suppose.
Yeah, it was bloody hard, being truthful. The problem is that it's very easy to say something that can be misconstrued, or some people can take from an offensive point of view at that particular question. Because the truth is, for the most part, the vast majority of martial arts training fits the violence to suit the art, as opposed to the art to suit the violence. So and so, without trying to do anyone down or misrepresent or say anything mean, because I don't want to do that, I actually found it really, really hard to make the skills that I've been learning. And this wasn't just karate, mind. This was a number of other things at this stage. I've done some wrestling. I've done some Japanese jiu-jitsu. You know, I've been doing a lot of different things, boxing. And I'd struggled to make it work. And the reason I'd struggled to make it work is because basically it wasn't the technique that was bad. What was bad was the platform that I was working off. And that's really where I struggled, because all of a sudden I found competition range didn't exist. What I found was that two-step sparring that I'd practiced religiously for donkey's years was irrelevant. Nobody, and again, I'm not trying to dismiss anyone, but but nobody attacked you like that. And the whole tempo was different. The mindset was different. Everything was different. The physical skill, the actual technique of punching somebody in the face, that's the same. But every other part of it was different, and that was quite a revelation. And not just a revelation, but it really made me for a while consider whether I'd wasted my time, whether I was being lied to, whether this, that, and the other. And it turns out that none of that was true. It wasn't a waste of time. I wasn't being lied to, none of that. All I had to do was find the way to put those pieces together in what suited, that environment and that thing. So as an example of that, when I was points fighting, my distance and my timing was different to when I was full contact fighting. And then that was different again to the different rule bases within those contact fights. But then all that was different again when you was actually in a situation where there were no rules. And so all of those things require a slightly different approach and a slightly different skill set. So it's not good, bad, wrong, right. It's just a case of understanding that they all have different ways of achieving the outcome.
Fantastic. Good. So you now run your own academy and your own school. Is it more of the self-defense that you teach? Is it kind of an amalgamation of your experiences? What's the main focus there?
Well, the gym itself now has been going for quite a number of years, and essentially that's I would call it a two-tier kind of thing. So I have sport fighters. I have guys that want to do kickboxing. So I do full contact kickboxing for those guys, K1 kind of stuff. I have some MMA guys. I don't do that at any high level because there are people far better than me at that. So that's almost like a basic level, if you like.
Yeah.
When and if they get to a point where they want to progress, I then point them off in the direction of people that specialize in that and do that well, because it's moved so far and so quickly.
Yeah.
And the knowledge has moved so fast that, unless you're specializing in that field, you're behind the curve.
Yeah, left behind, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of that side of it, the sports side of it, and the fitness side of it for those that want that. But then if you like, the reality-based side of it as well is something that I do quite heavily, and that's not just at the gym. That's sort of, if you like, that's what I do on a sort of national level. That's what I do at seminars and shows and all that kind of stuff. So that's really where I wouldn't like to say that's where my passion is, because my passion's right across the board, but that for me is where the most value is, because I honestly believe that, and again, I might upset some people with this, but I honestly believe that if your martial art is more art than martial, then as long as you're honest, that's fine. But for me, the martial has to outweigh the art.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, perfect. Do you think then that it's necessary for instructors or coaches, if they're teaching, say, more of the martial than the art, and if they're teaching things that are reality-based, I suppose, do you think it's necessary for them to have real life experiences, whether it's working security, whether it's working on doors, whether it's having real life confrontations? Do you think that is an absolute necessity, or do you think that can be taught in a dojo environment or an academy environment?
Again, it's a really interesting one because it's such a loaded question. I mean, firstly, you've got the famous sort of Rory Miller thing where he says about it's like touching an elephant in the dark. It's some people will touch a leg, some people touch a trunk, and they'll all get a different appreciation of what they think that looks like.
Yes.
And so that's a very real thing because there's so many different types of violence. So as an example, the violence that I was exposed to as a 7-8-year-old kid is not the violence I was exposed to in a sport combat setting. But again, that's not the violence exposed to in 3 o'clock rolling around outside a nightclub door. But none of those things are the same violence of, say, a rape victim or somebody like that. So they're all separate, they're all individual. But I mean, one of the things I do stress, and I say quite categorically, is that I don't think there's another industry that exists where somebody can claim to be an expert but don't actually do it themselves. So if I went to a piano player and they said, hey, I'm a brilliant piano player, but I don't know how to play, or I'm going to teach you how to swim, but I'm going to do it from the side because I can't actually get in there because I'll drown.
Yeah.
The ludicrousy of that isn't lost. The irony, it's hard not to see that. However, on the other end of the coin, I think there has to be a point where you just accept that we can't experience every single thing that we teach.
Yeah.
And so where is the line? That's where you've got to look at it. As long as people are honest, being absolute. I mean, you said I can swear, yeah?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, right. Being absolutely honest, this is how I see it, okay? If you're selling whatever it is you teach as a self-defense program, and claiming to give people self-defense knowledge, but what it actually is a competition-based sport, right? You're a liar.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I can't put it any clearer than that. Yeah. However, if you're teaching a competition-based sport and saying some of these skills are transferable, but there's a whole gap in the knowledge of what you really do need, great, happy days. I'm 100% behind that. And so really it's all about the honesty. So if somebody says, I've never had a real fight in my life, but I am absolutely super, super, super good at what my instructors have taught me, and I can pass that to you, fine, no problem. It's as long as people are honest, I don't care.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I completely agree. Good, yeah. And as you said, the martial arts industry is a little bit odd in many ways in terms of egos, in terms of, as you said, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, I'm a piano expert and then play the piano as well. But what's your thoughts on the industry today as a whole? That's quite a general question, I know, but compared to what you've seen maybe in the past, how it's progressed, because it's become such a it's become a new kind of thing, I suppose, recently, especially with coronavirus. Everyone's moved online. Even some people in the past that have said, no, I will never go online. It's no, we need to be in our academies. Online is the devil. And then suddenly within a week or so, they're all doing their online classes. So in some ways it's quite hypocritical. So yeah, what's your thoughts generally on the industry?
Okay, well, that's such a big and open question.
It is.
That's really hard to answer in one go. So you probably have to break that into a few sections. So,
Sure.
I mean, first and foremost, if we look at the training from when I first started to the training now, there's obviously quite a big difference with regards to health and safety.
Yep.
The society as a whole has changed. You know, everybody lives in this now generation where, you know, if you don't give me what I want, I'm going to go to Joe Blogs down the road and get it there. You know, there's all that sort of element to it, and the training has had to change to reflect that in a lot of ways, and that I find quite challenging because I live, you know, I lived in a world where you were very, very grateful for the knowledge that was being shared to you. It wasn't a God-given right. You know, you didn't just demand it and expect it and throw a paddy because you didn't get it. You worked damned hard, and if you proved yourself, you know, that if you proved that you were willing, able, to put the time and the effort in, then people would give you that time and effort back. You know, and so it's always been more than a monetary transaction, and that's really something that I struggle with, because there's a lot of people out there in the world that are looking at it solely as a business opportunity, and that's fine. Again, that's fine as long as they're honest. I don't give a hoot. But it's, again, when you start looking at it and selling something that shouldn't be sold. So when we look at a world of 12-year-old fourth dans, you know, when we look at this ridiculous situation where people are saying, come on my street lethal self-defense course for 6 weeks and I'll turn you into this whatever, and it shows a picture of them in a focus pad in what is essentially an aerobics with pads class, you know. That kind of stuff drives me batty, but that's the modern age we live in. And then when we look at the other side of it, it's progressed really well in the sense that the science is there now. There's a lot more good sense being talked about, you know. Far less people are being injured through stupid training ideas, and you know, and that sort of thing. Because the amount of guys that I know with knackered knees and hips and so on and so forth from a lot of bad practices, and you know, it's good that those kind of things now are being addressed and so on and so forth. So there's pluses and minuses to everything, obviously. Now, as we move on into the online world, again, it's great because it exposes some charlatans. It gives people a bit more knowledge, a bit more choice. You can actually see things out there now. But again, on the other side of the coin, you can argue, especially under current circumstances, that some people are doing very well in the online space in the current conditions.
Yes.
Whereas others are failing really badly. Now, again, you can look at this however you want. And one of the ways that I see this, and this is just my own truth, is that an awful lot of styles and organizations that work in a striking stand-up format that has a lot of patterns, katas, forms, that kind of thing, they're doing great because basically I can teach that to 50 people in a room exactly the same as I could teach that to 50 people in their own individual front rooms, right? And there's no disruption into the knowledge that I'm transferring across. And so for those people, it's almost like a home run because they've cleared the decks of all these other types, if you will. You know, if I'm a judo guy, if I'm a grappler guy, if I'm a combatives guy that needs an opponent, that needs somebody to play with, well, then it becomes a little bit harder. It doesn't make it impossible, and there are things that you can do, but then you're looking at things like skill acquisition. You know, you're looking at maintaining levels, you're looking at working at basics, you're looking at not going backwards, and so on and so forth. But a lot of these guys are really struggling because they're not sure how to format that in a way that can be put across on a screen. So, you know, I started teaching online a few years ago. I started doing a few courses a few years ago, not as a standalone product, because I honestly think, and again, this may be inflammatory to some people, but I honestly believe that you cannot teach martial arts 100% from a screen. You just can't. in my humble opinion. Okay, and I back that up with over 35 years of doing it, multiple black belts, you know, so on and so forth. You know, I'm not just some dude randomly saying my opinion. You know, this is backed up with a lifetime of study, and I honestly believe that you can't teach properly through just an online medium. However, I fully understand why people are taking to that at the moment. Yeah. And I do understand that it's the best that we have at the moment. And so people are just running with the ball, you know?
Yeah, it's a supplement for the time being. And then hopefully we can all get back to our dojos, our academies, ASAP. But, you know, even then there'll probably be a level of social distancing, and the grappling, the combatives, the MMA guys, probably, you know, honestly, they'll be probably one of the last ones to go back just because of the nature of what they do. So yeah, I think online is going to be here for a while. Some will like
I think it's going to be here forever.
Yeah. Well, I hope so in a way, because, you know, as you said, I think it's a great supplement for people. You know, but again, I also agree that you can't learn it 100%, and you can't do gradings online. Things like that I've seen. It's like, no, for me, I feel like, pardon?
Many people are.
Yeah, many people are, but for me, that doesn't sit right. It's not the same. You need the nerves, you need the adrenaline, you need the actual space of being there. Not doing it in your living room. That doesn't sit well for me. But again, you know, I don't think it's for anyone to judge at the moment, because people are just trying to get by, aren't they? So that's the thing.
It's a very hard one when people say it's not for you to judge, right? That you've got to then ask yourself a question: are you the gatekeeper to what you class as your authentic martial arts, or are you not?
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's really where it gets problematic, because if I consider myself a gatekeeper, then it is also my responsibility to call it when I see it. So if I see inauthentic martial arts, or if I see stuff that I think is being misrepresented, so on and so forth, then there's an element of it should be my responsibility to call that as part of the wider community.
Yeah.
But then, as you rightly say, then you're stuck in a position where people are just trying to do what they can with what they got, and we're all learning. There's no, you know, there's no pathway in this. There's no, oh, we've been through this before, so it's all new for everybody. So nobody knows the actual answers. And
that's true. Yeah.
I agree with you. I have no intentions of grading anybody through this situation, because I personally think that it's not. I can't guarantee the standards that I'm looking for, and that's my personal choice. I know other people are doing it, but it falls under the same banner for me as the 10-year-old fourth dance. You know, if you're going to make an 8-year-old a black belt, it absolutely devalues every other black belt ever. Simple as that. The moment that you do something like that, you devalue every other person in any other art. And so if somebody does a 50% grading at the distance and doesn't have to fulfill the usual criterias, then that then devalues every other person that's ever graded and every other person at that level. I can't sit in a room, and I get this, and I'm sure you probably have as well, and I know other people have. I can't sit in a room and talk to a group of people at some sort of social event without somebody telling me that, oh, you do martial arts, so does my little Johnny. He's 8 and he's got a second dan. And it's like,
I've seen it before, yeah.
It's like, no, we don't do the same thing. I can assure you, you know. And so it becomes very difficult then. And so that's really where the problem is with keeping quiet, is the fact that whenever somebody takes a step like that, it devalues the rest of the community. And that is a bit of an issue, I feel.
Yeah, perfect. Good. Let's talk a little bit more about online then. So at the moment, you've been doing quite a lot on TikTok, which for quite a few people is quite new. It's quite a new platform. And most people, especially if they're marketing, I think martial arts are quite backward in marketing anyway. We're getting better. But in terms of online, in terms of YouTube, Facebook, things like that, people are just starting to get their heads around it a little bit, starting to push out ads, things like that. But TikTok, for most, you say, what's that? But you've really pushed it forward, and you seem to be doing really well with it, and now you're helping other martial arts instructors kind of get on board with it. Is that so? Do you want to maybe just expand a little bit on that and why you think it's a good platform?
Yeah, ironic, isn't it? Because I've just spent the past half an hour waffling on about, about authenticity and this, that, and the other. And here we are now talking about a platform that is essentially 15 seconds of madness repeated and, infinity. So it's basically, for those that don't know, TikTok is the fastest growing social media platform. It's now the most downloaded app in the world. It's overtaken everything. it's just huge, and it's getting bigger by the moment. So they're now saying that it's at least as big as Instagram.
Okay.
But one of the really important things about it is that it's growing at twice the rate that Instagram did. It's getting bigger and bigger daily. It's getting more people on it all of the time. And at the moment, it's like the Wild West, as in it's a land grab. As
Sure.
in, if you think about trying to gain a following, eyes on, that sort of thing, if you try that now on YouTube or Instagram, you're going to struggle to build numbers. Whereas on TikTok, as long as you understand some of the basics and you're doing it the right way, it's actually pretty easy to grow at the moment. That's not going to last much longer, but for now it is. And so, yeah, so I've managed to, just to put this in context, I've built a following of just around the 200,000 mark. One of my highest video views is 4.5 million. My regular views are about 1.5 million views a week. Now, if you translate that to how you'd achieve that on something like Facebook, what kind of ad spend you need to do, so on and so forth. You know, when you look at it like that, it's a huge opportunity for people as long as they understand what it is.
Yeah. And does that transfer across then to your school? Does it transfer across to you as a martial artist, as a well-known person, or is it just like a flick through and that counts as a like and you don't really look at it? Or how does the algorithm work? Do you know?
Yeah. There has to be interaction for it to grow.
Okay.
So there are basically, if you go on there right now today, right, what you'll see is if you look at the martial arts niche, you'll see an awful lot of very well-known martial artists dying on their ass. Literally, virtually no one watching them, right? Yeah. And it baffles me because I can't understand why they can't see the very simple things they need to do to address that. Okay. And I know they're good martial artists in the main because I know them. You know, I personally know them. I've seen what they do. And so I know that that's not the issue. And so it's quite interesting in that respect. With regards to can it help? Yes. As an example, I had a video that went viral in the millions with one of my students. And I live in a small town, and within that area, there are 3 comprehensives that are within sort of 5 miles. Yeah. All 3 of those comprehensive school for about 3 weeks was saturated with me and my club and my students. It just dominated everything. The views were in the millions, all the kids were talking about it, all the parents were talking about it, the teachers knew who I was. Now, if you imagine that, and how many flyers you'd have to bundle in packs of 35 and drive around, you know, it's just astronomical. So from a level like that, brilliant. But now in the space that we're in with everyone moving online and you're not stuck geographically, if you have any kind of digital product, then this is exactly the space where you want to be in because it's a digital world.
Yeah, perfect. And what kind of digital products do you offer then at the moment?
Well, for myself, I just got like a lot of other people, I've got a number of online courses. However, excuse me, my courses aren't a knee-jerk reaction to the current situation. My courses have been out for quite some time, and I've been periodically adding to that over a couple of years. So it's one of those where there's a lot of really good stuff coming out now because everybody's having to use that dreadful word pivot and trying to do what they can. But what that means is there's an awful lot of really good and interesting stuff coming into the market. There's a lot of stuff available now that people can get. And so if you're looking to find a way to push that out to a wider audience, then that's a great platform. If you think about it, I've got 200,000 people that follow me. They all follow me because they have an interest in what I do. And so I don't have to convince them of anything. They're already there. And so all I've really got to do is show them the value in the product. And so when you're looking at it like that, again, if you take something like YouTube or Facebook, you've got to source those people, you've got to convince those people, you've got to build relationships with those people. You've already got that on TikTok once you started, building a few numbers.
Perfect. Yeah, good. What are your plans for the future then? So kind of in the next month, 2 months, 3 months, what you plan to do? Are you going to keep online with the TikTok, keep online with the courses, hopefully get back to the academy, things like that? What are your plans for whenever, really?
Yeah, well, you've got obviously the gym itself at the moment is sort of empty and a bit sad. I mean, in all the years that I've had it, it's never been closed for longer than a fortnight. Even when I've been off doing other things, the gym's been open and running. So that's that's a weird one, because nobody knows what the future is going to hold with regards to when we come out of this, how it's going to look.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk about, you know, long-term slow exposure and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So nobody knows on that. So who's to say? I'm hoping that we get back, and when we do, I'm sure, like a lot of other people, there's a lot of new things that I want to sort of implement, not new things that I'd like to make sure happen. It's been a great exercise in spring cleaning, if you like, you know, getting rid of all the old, bringing in the new. Obviously the online stuff will carry on, and I'll just keep doing what I was doing anyway with that, because this isn't a change for me. It's just a continuation of the same. I'm really looking forward to getting back out into the seminar circuit and back out to the shows and things, because absolutely love meeting people. I love being on the mats. I love training with people and swapping ideas, and that's really where the thing that I want the most, because as much as I like my writing, as much as I like the online stuff, the magic for me is being on the mats with people. That's the magic for me.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you very much then, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, hopefully we can all get back at some point and train together and get on the seminar circuits again. And yeah, hopefully it won't be too long for everyone.
I hope so too. It's a pleasure speaking. Thanks very much for having me on.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.